You're listening to episode 76, Cortney's story, a daughter with Hypoplastic Left Heart Syndrome.
Because I really believe that any mom who gets a diagnosis is strong enough to handle it. We do need support. We need tools. We need resources from our hospitals and from our communities. But I also believe in the individual strength that each mom has.
Hello, everyone. I am Katie Taylor, host of the Child Life On Call podcast and certified child life specialist. And if you haven't heard of that before, that's okay. I'm going to give you my little elevator speech. And certified child life specialists help kids and families cope with medical experiences and challenging life events. If this is your first time here, I'm so glad that you landed on Cortney's story because she is one incredible mom. This podcast is designed for parents of children with an illness or medical condition and just gives them a safe place to share their stories with each other in the hopes of not feeling so isolated by your child's illness. It's so easy to feel so overwhelmed, so alone. And hopefully this podcast gives you a little bit of reprieve from feeling totally isolated. So I got to know Cortney actually through Instagram, like I get to know a lot of my friends these days. And Cortney and I connected over a reel that I did that talks about how it's really okay for parents, especially moms, to not want to go visit their baby in the NICU. And so before you freak out and are like, how can you not want to go see your baby? It has so much less to do with actually seeing your baby than grieving the experience you thought you were going to have. So she and I totally bonded over that. So if you're on Instagram, go find her at Cortney, and it's spelled CORTNEY.given. And we did a whole little live about it, so you can go check that out. So I find her story so interesting, and one of the reasons why is she'll talk about it, but in high school she wrote a paper about hypoplastic left heart, never guessing, of course, that she would end up having a child with the exact syndrome she wrote a paper on. So let's go ahead and get started so you can hear from Cortney.
My name is Cortney Given, and I'm a mom to 3 little girls, no boys, just daughters. It's always a talking point when people see our kids out in public. Well, it used to be, not anymore so much with COVID, but we currently live in Hawaii on Oahu, and we've lived here for almost 5 years. My husband and I are both from Southern California, and we came out here to do some schooling, and then we ended up staying here for now, who knows when. We love it here. So, my daughter was actually diagnosed here with hypoplastic left heart syndrome, and it was right after we moved here. So we'd only been here a few months in Hawaii when we got that diagnosis, and it was devastating.
Oh gosh, yeah, because you just left your whole support network to go do something new, and you already had a daughter in tow, is that right?
Correct. So our oldest daughter is currently 6, but at the time was about 18 months, and my husband, quit his job. We decided we're going to go in on this back to school thing, both of us. And we just totally turned our lifestyle around, put all of our savings into moving to Hawaii to go to school. And we were ready to commit to, a student lifestyle. Mm-hmm. But then 2 months in, 3 months in, we knew we wanted to have another child. We were like, this kind of works with our timeline. We can have her in the spring. We'll be able to take some time off from school, and it will work out with my husband and I taking kind of turns finishing our degrees. And we had it planned. It was totally planned, and we were just going to make it work with 2 kids. And then our plan was changed immediately after her diagnosis. I was diagnosed in utero at 18 weeks gestation. So it was actually kind of earlier. They kind of pushed back, but we were having some trouble dating my pregnancy. So my OBGYN was like, well, maybe just going a little early. And then the ultrasound people were like, this is pretty early for the anatomy scan. And I'm really grateful that we went in earlier than we did.
Yeah, because you had more time. Can you take us back to that ultrasound appointment and what that experience was like?
Yeah, it was actually a really exhausting day because I had just flown in from the mainland. My husband and I had went and visited friends and family for the first time since moving to Hawaii, and we were just so homesick. So I had just flown in and with my toddler by myself on a long flight. It was like
and
5 hours.
Pregnant.
And I was pregnant, and we didn't have very much money, so we just did the lap infant thing because she was under 2. That was the only way we could afford this trip back home. And so I had her sitting on my lap the whole time. I was so done after 5.5 hours with her, and I had spent some time alone. My husband was already back in Hawaii because he had to be back in school. And so he picked us up. We went straight to the hospital, and we were like, it was like a checklist. My husband was playing basketball at the time, so he was a student athlete. So he had a game later that evening. So it was like, pick us up, go straight to the hospital. We got there early, hoping that we could be seen, get our scan done, go straight home. He was going to go to practice and like get all that stuff done. We were going to get ready for the game that night. It was a very busy day. And this anatomy scan was like in the back of our mind. We'd already gone through one with our first daughter. So it wasn't like, a huge stressor for us. We'd already kind of known how it was going to go. And we got there thinking maybe we'll get in early, we'll get a new spot. And we didn't. Of course, they were like jam-packed and busy. And our toddler was getting antsy and hungry. And she was just kind of bouncing on the walls. And she was mostly in a good mood. But we had been there for like at least 45 minutes waiting for our appointment past our time. So we had been there a while. Finally, we get seen, and it's taking a lot longer than I remembered. And I remember laying on the table thinking, why is this taking so long? This was a lot faster the first time around. And I remember having this thought. Looking back, it was like, it's so funny that I picked up on this, but never thought twice about it. Like, I didn't think it was a red flag or anything. But I was like, oh, she's looking at the heart a lot. That's interesting. And it was like a casual thought I had, observation, and she moved on. So I thought, oh yeah, it's just because she probably needed to like repeat a scan or repeat an area that the baby moved from. And at this point, my daughter, her name is Gray, like the color. She was kind of getting upset at this point. She's like kind of sassy, cranky, really wants to eat, really wants to go, leave. She's done. Yeah. And the ultrasound tech goes back to the heart and tells us and says, so I sit up because I think she's done. And she's like, I need to go talk to the doctor. There is something on the heart that I see. And I was like, okay. And so she leaves the room, and my husband and I look at each other and we're like, what? Like, there's something wrong with our baby. And he's like, well, let's just hope she's bad at her job. And I laugh and I'm like, yeah, worst case scenario, the baby needs a heart transplant. Best case scenario, it's nothing. And it's just kind of cringy sometimes when I think that I said that, not even understanding. We both love humor. We both love comedy. So we kind of use that as our coping mechanism for good and for bad. And I can't believe I said that out loud because I just didn't even know it was coming. And I kind of laughed. My husband kind of laughed awkwardly. We're just sitting there in silence like, what the heck is going on? And another ultrasound tech comes in. She does not say anything to us. She doesn't introduce herself. She doesn't say hi. She just goes straight to the table and says, I need to do some more scans. And I'm trying to read her badge. I need glasses, so I can't really see her badge very well. So I was like trying to see who she was and what she was doing. She does more scans. She leaves. And we're just sitting there like, what was that? Like, what is going on now? We're just like, my toddler is getting more and more angry. She's crying. And we're just like getting more stressed. And then 3 doctors and our ultrasound tech all walk in together. And that feeling of seeing them all come in changed the energy in the room because we knew this was not okay. Like something was wrong, seriously. And nothing can prepare you for that moment. And I just want to wrap my arms around any medical mom that has to go through that moment of getting that news, because there's just nothing quite like that shock. And they were all very kind. They all looked at me like they wanted to also hug me. And my ultrasound tech, the original one, was just looking at me. I think she was almost on the verge of tears because she just wanted to say, I love you. Like, I'm so sorry. Like, but they were like, there is something wrong with your baby's heart. And we immediately start crying, my husband and I. We're just a mess because we're so shocked, so blown away. And the main doctor said the left side of the baby's heart, and I knew it was hypoplastic left heart syndrome. And I looked at Jeff and I say, oh my gosh, it's hypoplastic left heart syndrome. It's what Spencer has. And Spencer is a dear family friend of ours. I babysat him when I was a teenager. I lived with his family for a short time in high school. And because of his scar growing up, I saw that he had heart surgery, and I would ask his mother about it, and we have had long conversations about it. And I thought it was so interesting that I wrote a report on it in my high school anatomy class.
Oh, wow.
We had to pick a disease, and I thought, this is really rare. Half a heart? Who knows that exists? So
yeah. Oh my
I
gosh.
totally understood like the anatomical part of it. And they all looked at me like I was kind of crazy because they were like, how do you know what that is? Like,
Yeah.
that's not something that normal people know. And I said, a friend has it. And they were like, okay, so the baby will eventually need a heart transplant. And I just was like, are you kidding me? Like, I can't believe I just said that out loud minutes ago. And I'm here now hearing the worst case scenario in my book.
Yeah. It's interesting. As you're telling me this, I can think about 3 other parents on this podcast who have done something very similar at that ultrasound appointment. And, like, I wonder, I hope it's not spina bifida, and turns out it's spina bifida, just the most random things that you can say, and then it happens. So you're definitely not alone in that. It has happened to other people before.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just like this weird intuition or whatever it is. It is this like weird thing that happens. And the frustrating part for my husband was that in that moment, they were all addressing me as a pregnant woman. And sometimes it's hard to articulate the time when I was pregnant because a lot of things were happening to my body. Even though it was my daughter's diagnosis, I was still being involved with so much scanning and so many, like we did an amniocentesis and like all of those things were done to my body. So sometimes I combine our experiences, but in that moment, they were all addressing me. And they stopped explaining what hypoplastic left heart syndrome meant, which meant my poor husband was just left in the dark. He was hearing words that he didn't understand. He's very smart, but if you're not educated in heart or cardiology issues, it's really, even most nurses and doctors don't really understand the severity of it unless they're very well versed in this stuff. Right. And so he's hearing heart transplant, he's hearing heart surgeries, and his mind is just spinning. We're both just sobbing. And then they say, and you can't have your baby here. And we're just like, what did we do? Our lives just got completely changed. We've only been in Hawaii for 3 months. We were trying to do something good by going back to school for our family. And now everything is changing. And so they told me, like, you have to be off the island by at least 36 weeks. We have a few recommendations that we can give you as far as going for surgery.
So they didn't even just mean like you can't deliver at this hospital. They meant like you can't deliver here in this area, in this region.
Yeah. The first surgery, the Norwood surgery required for hypoplastic left heart syndrome, is a surgery that you want someone who does it regularly, not just I can do it. But because the baby's hearts are so small and the skill level has to be so high, they were just like, the doctors here, there are doctors that fly from California to Hawaii to perform heart surgeries every so often. But this surgery is just like so highly skilled that it's the opposite. Like you have to fly to the surgeon. Mm-hmm. So we were like given those options, like, you either do comfort care, which is where you let the baby live as long as naturally possible without any intervention, minus, pain, maybe some oxygen, just to give them comfort so there's no suffering involved. But that's for parents who do not want to pursue any kind of intervention outside of just a natural birth. And then we were given the option to terminate our pregnancy, or there's the intervention of the 3 surgeries with the caveat of this is only a semi-long-term Band-Aid. The 3 surgeries will get you hopefully into your 30s, and then you will need a transplant at some point in their life as well. So when you're faced with that and you're 18 weeks pregnant, you and your husband are just sobbing, you're just like so overwhelmed. We knew we wanted to keep our baby. We were not interested in comfort care. So I said yes to the surgeries. I said, yes, we want to do the surgeries. They're like, okay, we need you to do some tests. We'll get you a pediatric cardiologist in here to confirm the diagnosis. And it was just like, boom. Everything felt like it was out of my control at that moment. After that, I just was like on this conveyor belt, so to speak, of appointments and doctors and tests and scans and all of these things, and for very good reasons. But it felt extremely overwhelming from that point on because of how much needed to be done to plan for the baby's arrival.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I'm thinking about you and your husband right there with your daughter Gray there as well, and just all that you're having to handle in that moment. How did you if you can put yourself back there a little bit, like how did you get through like the rest of your pregnancy? Did you have a positive outlook? Were you feeling overwhelmed? Was it both? Like how did you get through the end of your pregnancy?
Yeah, we were just a wreck that day. I didn't even try to feel better. I just was sobbing, and I would be okay for a second and then just remember all of it again and remember hearing what they were saying and then just sob all over again. But I knew I needed to call Spencer's mom, Natalie, and I immediately called her because the one hope I did have was that I knew a little boy who was surviving, who was growing up, who seemed absolutely normal to me. So calling Natalie was the best thing I did for myself in that moment. As soon as we got to the parking garage, I called her, and I couldn't even say the diagnosis out loud. And it's actually pretty emotional to like remember how I felt in that moment, because when you first get a diagnosis, it's actually hard just to say the words. And I couldn't say it. I just kept saying, she has hypoplastic. And then she finished it for me, and we sobbed on the phone together. And nobody else who told me it was going to be okay, it didn't really make me feel better except for Natalie. Yeah. She was the only person hearing the words, it's going to be okay, gave me comfort. And that was the only thing, because everyone else was like trying to, be kind and supportive by saying, it's going to be okay. We're here for you. But hearing it from someone who had walked the path that I was about to go down, hearing someone who knew the severity of it, who had sat by their baby after open heart surgeries, who knew the path it took, hearing them say it meant something very valid to me. And I really clung to that hope of there were kids surviving this. There were families that had walked through it before me, and that kept me going. We really struggled with just changing our family dynamic. I think that was like part of the stressful thing of trying to put school on hold and coordinate moving to California after leaving and having a place to stay with family and kind of being independent and then being reliant on family again. And all of that coordination was a little overwhelming. We didn't have very much money. We were just, trying to keep our expenses very minimalized, and to be thrown into a situation that we just were so unprepared for, both financially and emotionally, was hard. And, but the thing about that is I got a lot of it. Like, you're so strong. Like, people would tell me, like, you're so strong. I don't know how you do it. And I know people mean that as a compliment, but I didn't feel strong, and I especially didn't feel like special. People would tell me that, like, you're so special, you're getting a special child because you're special. And I'm like, I'm not special. I'm not stronger than any other mom. I'm just waking up every day and having to do what I need to do. Like I have a toddler that I have to take care of. I have to feed her and play with her. I have a baby growing in me that needs me. And I just do it. Like I just have to do it because of the things I want in my life. And so there's just like a natural drive that I wanted to do the things that I needed to do to take care of my baby. And that hope kept driving me through all of that. All of the hard days, I just let myself be sad, honestly. I didn't give myself any timeline to be happy. I just was like, yeah, I'm going to be sad. When I'm sad, I'm going to cry. And I'm going to have a lot of hope at the same time. And I didn't feel like there was a contradiction in that. I just allowed both. And I look back, and that was a really big gift for me, because I know sometimes we can put parameters around ourselves, like, okay, like enough grieving, enough being sad about this, like time to, be happy and hope and all that stuff. And there were lots of times I was happy, but I just allowed all of it. And I think the other gift I gave myself is to grieve the baby I thought I would have. And I just remember thinking like, yeah, I had a plan. I had this idea of how our life was supposed to go, and I'm losing that. Whether that was a real loss or not, I have a perceived loss in my life, and I need to grieve that. I need to grieve the baby I thought I'd have, the birth plan I thought I'd have, all of the things that we talked about and imagined over the next 7 months, our life, postpartum, and all of it was gone. And I was just really focused on grieving that. And that was a really amazing thing that I allowed myself to do, because I don't think without that, it would have been even worse, because it was just hard.
We'll be right back. Hey guys, did you know Child Life on Call is more than just a podcast? We have free resources for parents, kids, and professionals. And by the way, a new app coming out in 2022. We will be partnering with facilities to empower and educate kids, parents, and the care team, and we want you to be a part of it. Sign up to have the facility you visit or work for be one of the first to have access at childlifeoncall.com. What you were saying about how when people say, you're so special and that's why you're going to have a special baby, and in that moment, it makes complete sense that you didn't feel that. But I wonder if, like, now looking at where you are and where you were, are you able to see yourself as how special you were back?
Strong, yes. Special, no. Because I really believe that any mom who gets a diagnosis is strong enough to handle it. We do need support. We need tools. We need resources from our hospitals and from our communities. But I also believe in the individual strength that each mom has. And that's one thing that I try to communicate when newly diagnosed moms approach me. I always try to reiterate, like, your brain is telling you that you're not going to be able to handle this, that you are not strong enough to go through these things, that you're not the right mom to do these things, and you are. Like, you are hands down capable of handling whatever happens throughout this journey. That doesn't mean you don't need help. That doesn't mean you might want to reach out to friends and family and get support, but that still means you are strong. Like, you are strong enough to handle it. And I think looking back, I can see my strength. I can see the times where I felt completely inadequate, but still did it. And I'm like, that's a sign of a mother's love and a mother's strength. I still don't think I'm that special, and I just think that I'm a mom who did what she had to do. And I think that's what most moms of children who have a diagnosis feel like. They have to do what they have to do because they love their kid, and most moms will do it.
Yeah. Oh, I just love that. That is such an empowering statement. And really, for any parent or any human, you are capable of things that you don't think you are. Just wait and see. And I love that message that you send. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I think it's really important to recognize when you're in those really hard situations, to recognize that you are doing it. In the moments that you feel most inadequate, the days of the hospital that drag on, preparing for open heart surgery when you're saying, like, I can't do this, you're doing it. You're literally doing it. You're moving forward every day. Even if you feel totally terrible throughout the process, you're still doing it. So you don't have to feel happy or positive to be strong.
Yeah. Mm. Well, let's talk about, moving a little bit forward to Zola's surgeries. And for those who don't know how invasive and the coordination that goes into these surgeries, not even the first one, but the second and the third, talk a little bit about how you handle the balance of getting yourself ready, getting her ready. How does all that work for your family?
Yeah, so right now we are preparing for her third surgery, and it is a lot of communication. My husband and I talk about it. We talk about it with her a lot because we have a lot of pictures that we've printed out into little books, which I highly recommend to other families who are diagnosed with a congenital heart defect, because it allows it to be kind of part of their story and just normalized rather than this like big, scary, taboo subject. And so she'll pick up these books and be like, look, Mom, I'm in the hospital. I'm like, yep. And she's like, that's my scar. And that's when I had heart surgery. And so she has this vocabulary because we've always just talked about it openly. We've talked about it with our daughter who's older. We've talked about it with Zola. And so for me, I just want her to know that no matter what she's feeling, she can tell me. And she does. Sometimes it's late at night when I'm putting her to bed and she's like, I'm scared to have heart surgery. And I'm like, really? And we get to have like a discussion, and she's going to be 4 in 2 weeks. So she's pretty young, but she's able to just feel her feelings and articulate those. And I think that is like really important for when she's going into surgery, so that she can tell me, I'm feeling scared, and I can tell her, and that's okay. You're allowed to feel scared. You're allowed to be sad. You're allowed to be nervous, because if I were in your position, I would be sad and scared and nervous too.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just try to be really open with her and really open to any of the feelings she has. And I also try to remind her, I don't try to argue with her, but I do try to remind her, and Mommy will be there to help you, and Daddy and all of our friends at the hospital, all of your doctors who are your friends are there to help you as well. And we're all there to help your heart. And because she's 4, I don't really know the impact, but I'm hoping that long term, this will build trust and confidence between us as she grows up, because I really want her to feel confident in making her decisions. And there's so much that is out of her control, like autonomy wise, that I want to empower her with these small opportunities to practice that autonomy, about talking about her body and talking about her feelings. And so as we prepare for this third surgery, it's just been a lot about that, and a lot of talking to our older daughter as well, that Mommy and Daddy are going to be gone for a little while, several weeks, and letting her tell us that she's scared or nervous, but she's not. She just is excited to stay with Grandma. And preparing now, the second time around for moving back to Hawaii is a little bit better in the sense of we've already gone through it, so we know the drill. We're more financially prepared, having a heads up notice to save, having better insurance, having jobs. All of that stuff makes a huge difference in our ability to plan ahead. For the first surgery, we moved to California, and we were there for 9 months because we couldn't fly in between her first and second surgery. So she had her first surgery at 36 hours old, and then she was in the hospital for 9 weeks when we finally could go back home in California. We had her there until she was 6 months old, when she had her second open heart surgery. And then we had to wait a month before she could be on an airplane. And then we finally flew on the day of her 30-day mark, and we flew to Hawaii. And during that, there was like a 3-month space where my husband and Gray went back to Hawaii because he needed to keep his spot in school. So I was alone in California with Zola, and he was alone in Hawaii with Gray. We kind of tag teamed it in separate states. And so we were just so looking forward to that reunion of being able to fly back. So he came out for that second surgery for a week, and then he flew right back to Hawaii. And then we were able to reunite in Hawaii exactly 30 days after her second surgery. And that was like one of the best days ever because of that.
I can imagine that flight. You're just so antsy to get there and be together.
Yeah, it was a long flight, but we were just so grateful.
You're leaving California, you're on the plane back to meet up with your husband in Gray, and I'm guessing you have to establish trust with a care team that's there, and that's probably hard when the doctors that you've known and loved for 9 months nonstop or are in another state.
Seriously tried to vet all of our doctors if moving to Hawaii was irresponsible. We seriously questioned. We were like, if we have to move back to California, we will. We don't know how it's going to work or what's going to happen, but we were very, very nervous because we loved CHLA, because we were so confident in their care. We just knew no matter what would happen, we could have confidence in them. And being able to transfer our daughter to Hawaii was probably the most nerve-wracking thing ever. We had to reestablish care with a GI doctor because she had a G-tube. We needed to find a cardiologist and a pediatrician and a pharmacy and all of these things. And we were very, very nervous. And when I got back to Hawaii that first day, I was just so happy. We had the best day. We went to the beach. We just hung out all day. And it was like the most sweet reunion between our girls. And then that night I laid in bed ready to just zonk out. I was exhausted from all the emotional adrenaline. And I just got hit with a huge wave of anxiety that this was wrong and that Zola was not going to make it because we didn't have a cardiologist already established and that we were going in blind with no care team here and that we need to be back in LA. And it was like a week before any of that dissipated. Like every night when I went to sleep, I was just having these anxiety attacks of, I wouldn't have them during the day, but as soon as I lay down in bed, my mind would just start racing and I would just feel so overwhelmed that Zola was not going to have the right care. And as soon as we got in touch with our cardiologist, the same cardiologist who confirmed her diagnosis in utero, he was like, yep, I remember you. Let's get her on my schedule. And it was fine. Like, we love him. It was just the anxiety of not knowing, of that fear of not having like an established care team was a little terrifying. But as soon as I got in contact with someone who understood me, I was just so afraid of going to a pediatrician because the pediatrician I had in California, when I walked into their office to explain what my daughter's heart condition was, they just looked at me like, okay, it's going to be what? Like, let's sit down and talk. Like, and this has happened with every single pediatrician. I try to go through her medical history and they are just very overwhelmed because again, it's just so detailed, so specific, so rare. But as soon as I got to talk to a cardiologist who was like, yep, we can come see her. Like, let's see how she's doing. Let's get her medications at the pharmacy. Like, then it was so easy. And I felt so much more relief. And we feel really, really grateful for our team here in Hawaii. And we've had really great care from them as well.
Has Zola had any complications kind of along this timeline after her second surgeries and heading back to Hawaii?
No. The only real complication we had was her G-tube fell out. It was right before her first birthday. And we were hoping, her birthday is in April, we were hoping to have the G-tube out by summertime. We were going to be working with her GI doctor and a dietitian to decrease her G-tube feeds and increase her oral feeds because she was feeding orally well. And we were just trying to establish a plan. Like, if we can get her to keep gaining weight and she doesn't lose any weight, then we can, talk about removing the G-tube. So we had a plan in place. One night, I put her in bed with me. So it's 4 a.m. She nurses, and I know she wakes up early. So I'm just so grateful for the next 2 hours that I can go back to sleep. And she cries again, and I just pat her, and then she fell right back to sleep instantly. So it wasn't like this long crying phase. It was just a short cry, and then she went back to sleep. And when you have a child with a G-tube, you get really used to making sure it's in place. So I had this habit of just automatically touching her G-tube spot, just like very lightly, to make sure that it was good and like still there. And I did that, and it was gone. And it was like, what the crap? So I immediately woke up, threw over the blankets trying to look for the G-tube, and it was out. And I open up her onesie, and I am trying to put it back in, and it wouldn't go in. And so I was like, we had already done this before where it had gotten snagged, and we immediately were able to put it back in, and it was fine. But this was like, oh, this isn't going in. So I started feeling really uncomfortable because you have to push a G-tube in much more harder than you think. And it's very uncomfortable feeling to do as a parent. So I immediately called my husband, and he was at the gym. He runs over and he tries to do it. And he's like, yeah, I cannot do this. So then I call her pediatrician, and he's like, bring her in. Let's look at it. And he looks at it. And he's like, yeah, it's closed. Like, there's nothing I can do. I'm not going to try to put it in either. So we were just like, oh my gosh, this is several months before our plan to like do this whole weight gain thing. And so that was probably the biggest complication she had because it was just earlier than we anticipated. We wanted her to gain weight more. And that has honestly been the same struggle with her this whole time. She's a pretty small little girl. And the one thing that's postponing her third surgery is weight gain because she has a few oral issues. Nothing major, but just takes very small bites and has a very strong gag reflex and just wants things. She's a little picky. She eats lots of weird foods, but she is a little pickier on like what she will eat. And because of that, she gains weight very slowly on her own timetable. And weight has always been an issue for her, even when she was in the hospital after born. So, which is very common for heart babies to experience.
Okay, gotcha. So have you been able to connect with other parents? I know you have a big online presence. Do you have any local parents that you connect with kiddos that have hypoplastic left heart?
I've had a few families locally reach out to me who've also had a diagnosis. Since COVID happened, I haven't been able to like hang out with anybody. Most of the support people I have found are through social media. And it is a gift to be able to see other kids going through similar things. And it's a double-edged sword. I often tell moms, don't compare your stories because you get sick of hearing it in the hospital, but every single doctor, when you ask a question, they will have an answer, but it always starts out with, well, it depends on the child. Well, it depends because every child is different. And every variation of that is, well, it depends.
Right.
And then they give a very like average, very conservative response because it really does. Every child that I know who's had hypoplastic left heart syndrome has walked a different path.
Right.
Every path is so different. And so I remember actually getting the diagnosis and immediately going to social media, and I typed in the hashtag HLHS, and I found a woman who was posting about her son. And I'll never, ever forget her or her son because I was like religiously following her journey because it was a mom who was just a few months ahead of me who was walking the same path. And he ended up passing away, and I was devastated. And she messaged me and said, do not let our story stop you from having hope. Do not let his story stop you from moving forward with your daughter. And it was the most touching experience because in her time of grief, in this incredibly difficult time, she reached out to me to make sure that I should keep going. And it just meant the absolute world because that's what heart moms do. They just are there and just say, keep going. Every story is different. And that really is the truth.
You know, it makes me tear up for sure hearing that. And a lot of my questions at the end of this podcast are, you know, what has your daughter taught you? What has your son taught you? And I think about her son, you know, I don't even know him, but the lives that he has impacted through his mom's story. And I would love to hear what Zola has taught you, but I'd also love to know, like, what have you learned about yourself? Like, what have you learned about you, Cortney, that has maybe surprised you, or maybe something inside of you that you didn't know existed before Zola came around?
Yeah, I have way more authority than I give myself credit for. I think that I was the type of child that just kind of abdicated to any authority. And so going into a hospital setting where you're a parent and you have to advocate for your child, you challenge authority figures in my life that I would have just not tried to challenge. And when she was in the hospital not eating and not gaining weight, I really wanted to be able to breastfeed her. And that was something I really had to advocate for. When she was not gaining weight and we wanted to test all possibilities before choosing the G-tube, I had to advocate for that. And even when she got her G-tube, I don't regret any of our decisions about trying each possibility to know for sure that the G-tube was the right path. And for me, I've just learned so much for myself that I am way more capable than I think I am. And moms seriously doubt their abilities to be able to do the things that you are required to do. And so my confidence as an advocate, as a mother has gone up. And I feel like my overall gratitude for life has increased immensely. Zola has really taught me how precious life is. And when you have to face your own child's mortality, it gives you such a deeper respect for life every day. And I'm not perfect. I don't ever claim to just be living in bliss every single day. I am a normal mom and I get upset and I have hard days. But generally speaking, I do feel that I just live with so much more intention than I did prior to getting a diagnosis, because I always thought there's always time for this and there's always time for that, and maybe I'll do that later. But I've been just more intentional about my own personal development, the things we do with our kids, and not trying to postpone too much for my future, because I just don't know what's going to happen. And I don't try to mean that in a fearful way. I know there can be a lot of fearful messages in you only live once and you have to, live your best life. I really don't come from a place of fear. It's more just about respect of what I have and respect that Zola's diagnosis is very unknown. And we don't know what will happen in the future and what that holds. And that's both scary and comforting to me, because that means I can take advantage and be more present with her and present with my husband and my kids, and all the things that I want to do are worth pursuing right now versus in a year or 2 or 5.
Oh, I just love that so much. And that perspective that you're now sharing on your social media and on this podcast is definitely going to help other parents. And I thank you so much. I have the honor of working in a hospital, and I just want to take that soundbite, and play it for these caregivers who are right at the beginning, when the road is still so unknown, and I know yours is too. But those beginning moments are so hard. And so the fact that you're out there and you're a heart mom. Oh, I love what you said. Like, that's a heart mom. The way you talked about your friend on social media, it makes me know the world's going to be okay because there's people like you in it.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much.
I'd love if you could tell the listeners where they can follow you and get in touch with you and maybe follow along with Zola's story, especially now that she's going to be having surgery. We have a big group of child life specialists and caregivers and parents that love to just cheer you on. So let us know where we can follow you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm most active on Instagram at Cortney.given, and Cortney is spelled with no U, Cortney. And I also have a podcast called Mindset for Medical Moms, where I share examples from my journey as a medical mom and tools that I've implemented in my own life. And it's a really great place to hang out with me there. And I am very active on social media, sharing the same stuff, tools, but also my life, everyday stuff. My kids dominate a lot of my feed, and I just share my thoughts about motherhood and overwhelm and all the things that come up when you're a medical mom.
I love that. And you're always so raw and so authentic, and that is much appreciated. Much appreciated. Well, thank you so much for being here today, and I can't wait to be able to share this with everybody so they can follow along with you and learn from you. Thank you so much, Cortney, for being here. Guys, I'm going to link to all of her stuff in the show notes so you can go find her, and we will see you again next week for a 12-minute talk in which we answer the question, how can music therapy help my child? All right, I'll see you again soon. Thank you for listening to the Child Life On Call podcast. I'm your host, Katie Taylor, and you can follow us at Child Life On Call on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Please rate and review to make it easier for other families to find us. We have cute merch available at www.bonfire.com/store/Child Life On Call, and you can listen to more episodes and find resources at childlifepodcast.com.